Everyone can hear me now, right? Thumbs up? Perfect. All right. So it's 7 p.m. We'll go ahead and start lecture. If you weren't here for lecture 0, you probably haven't seen me yet. My name is Sami. You can call me Sami. If you're curious, 196 is a class by students for students. So I'm not a professor, neither is Rohan. Just call us by our names. So the reason why I wasn't here last Thursday is because I was out for an on-site, but I will be here for every lecture along with Rohan. And we can go ahead and go through some course obligations. So next slide. So the way that it's going to be split up is Piazza is going to be for all questions, just very general questions about assignments or anything you're curious about for the class. Don't directly email us for these kind of questions because if you have a question, oftentimes someone else will have the same exact question as you. So don't spam our emails, post it on the Piazza. Discord, we're going to give out Discord links if we haven't already once projects are assembled. Projects are going to be assembled sometime next week, start of next week or late next week. And again, so for email, these are going to be for emergencies. Like if you cannot complete course obligations for whatever reason, then go ahead and shoot us an email. Me and Rohan's emails are on the syllabus. And homework, we're going to assign these on PeriLearn. So the PeriLearn is currently being set up. We'll have a homework released on Friday for Bash. So today we're going to go through Bash. Rohan will introduce himself, but that's it for me for today. My name is Sami. If you have any questions, just go ahead and reach out to me.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? Everyone can hear me? Okay, cool. So today we're going to go through Bash. So for Bash, I'm going to sit at my computer for most of it because I want to do live demo, because I think the best way to learn Bash is to see it happening in front of you and then practicing it afterwards. So for right now, I'd appreciate if you didn't practice it and just watch me so that you can learn the commands and the content that they're teaching, and then afterwards I'm going to post the files that we used, and you guys can try exactly what we did in lecture, but back at home or wherever. All right, cool. So what is Bash? So Bash is a text-only interface which is used for controlling Unix systems. So what does that mean? It means you have, instead of having your GUI interface, your graphical user interface, to click and open files and folders and look at all your stuff, you do everything from the window on the left. That's called Bash. It's a command CLI, command line interface, and you only interface with it through text. It's an acronym for Born Again Shell, which is a pun on Stephen Bourne, who is the author of the direct ancestor of the Unix shell. It's called SH. And it's used in many Linux machines, almost all Linux machines, and it was used on all Mac systems up until Catalina, and we swapped to ZSH, which I'll talk about in a second. So why do we want to learn Bash? What's the point if we can just click on stuff and it's so much easier? Why do we learn all this hard stuff? Well, Bash is a standardized way of manipulating the operating system. And because it's standardized, it's very easy to automate processes and manipulate how you work with your operating system. Because let's say, for instance, you want to repeatedly open this folder and open up this file. To do this autonomously, you have to train computer vision to go in there and click on stuff, find what you're looking for. It's very difficult. Whereas using the Bash, you can just use text inputs to control everything. So standardization allows for easy automation and manipulation of many different tasks. And for some server-side tasks, if you're working on a server or if you're working on a virtual machine, a lot of that will have to be done through a terminal. You might not get a GUI interface. So if you're on Linux, your setup is super easy. You have to do nothing at all. You're probably already using Bash. If you're not, you can come to office hours and we'll help you set something up. If you're on a Mac and you're pre-Catalina, you're fine. You're on Bash and there's no need to set up anything. If you're post-Catalina, you also kind of have to do nothing. You aren't on Bash. You're on something called ZSH, which is another shell interface similar to Bash, but there are some slight differences. And for the purposes for this class, Bash and ZSH can be treated interchangeably. The differences are negligible. And for Windows, if you're on Windows 10, you can follow the tutorial to set up something called Vagrant, which is a virtual machine, and you can run a Linux shell there. And if you're using an earlier version of Windows, come to office hours and we'll help you set up a Linux shell. So for the purposes of this demo, we're going to use this kind of file structure. So if we look at the window on the right here, we come from the user to the desktop to intro to bash, which is a folder, and we can see all the different folders here. Are there any questions about this structure or about bash so far? Okay, great. So let's start off with our first command, ls. So a lot of the commands are really easy to remember because they're basically just shortened form versions of words. So ls is just shortened of list. And ls will list all the files in the current directory. So the way you use ls is you just go into a folder. So right now I'm in the intro to bash folder, and you type ls. And you'll see your other directories, which are in a different color, and then your files. Pretty basic stuff. Any questions about that at the moment? Okay, cool. Next we have pwd, or print working directory. So as the title suggests, this function will just print the path to your current directory. So the way we do this is we go into terminal and we type, can everyone see the terminal screen fine? Yeah, okay. You type pwd and hit enter, and you'll see the path from your home directory all the way to the current directory that you're in. So if we look at the diagram here, we see we started users, which is here, go onto Rohan Suresh, desktop, and then we're in the intro to bash folder, which we can see in this path here. Our next command is cd, change directory. So cd allows you to change the current directory that you're in. So cd is not like the other commands we learned in that you can't just type cd and expect to get anywhere. You have to type cd and follow that with an argument, which will be the directory that you want to move to. So let's go into a new directory. So we're currently in the intro to bash directory. Let's try to go to directory 1. So to move from the current directory to something that is relative to where you are, it's very easy. You just type, so let's list the files right now. We can see the directory 1 is here inside intro to bash, the folder that we're using. So we go cd directory 1. And now it doesn't look like anything's changed, but when we type pwd to see the directory that we're working in, we can see that we're now, instead of being intro to bash, we're in directory 1. So we moved from the intro to bash folder into directory 1. And if I list the files here, we see that we're not looking at these files anymore. Over here, we're looking at these files on the side. Does that make sense? Cool. So there's some things that extra that you can do with cd. So, oh, sorry, yes. Is a space in it? Okay, so if you have a space, the way you want to do it is so type in like the first word and then press tab, and that'll autocomplete for you. And you'll see there's like a backward slash to fill up the space. Does that work? Okay, that I can do from here. So let's make a file here. So you'll learn this command in a second. I'll do it on my desktop. That's easier. I'm going to make a new folder. It's going to be called some space folder. All right, so now if I go here, we can see that there's some folder here, right? That makes sense? So now if I want to go here, I can press cd, sum, and hit tab. And for this space, you'll have a backslash followed by a space. And now I can go into this folder. And if I print the working directory, we can see that the space is here, but we can't put spaces into our arguments. You have to put a backward slash and then a space. That make sense? Okay, great. Okay, cool. So with the cd command, there's other things you can do. Because normally when because let's say you're trying to go from directory 1 all the way back to users. How do you go? Firstly, how do you go backwards? So if you want to go backwards up through your directories, you do ... So you press, so let's go into directory 1. If we print the working directory, we see that we're in directory 1 right now and not intro to bash. If we want to move up to intro to bash, we do cd space ... If I hit enter, our new directory is intro to bash. And if we wanted to go back all the way up to users, there's two things we can do. We can firstly do cd ... // repeatedly until we're there. which is really tiring. Or if I go back to where we were, we can do CD and then start the argument with a /. So if we do this, we have now what's called an absolute path. That means we're not going from relative to where we are anymore. We're going directly from our home directory, which will be user. So I do CD/ and hit enter. If I print the working directory, there is none because we're back in home. So now if I want to go back to where we were, I have to go back to users, back to my desktop, and back to intro to bash. Does that make sense with the absolute and relative path? So relative is without the /, and that'll be from moving from where you are to a new file, new directory, sorry. And the absolute path is you started with the /, and it'll take you all the way back to the home directory, and you have to put the whole path back to where you want to be. Cool. The next command we're going to learn is concatenate, or simply cat. And cat is used to display the contents of a file. And this also takes an argument. So you type in cat space the file that you want to look at, and you'll be able to read that file. Or not read it, the terminal will print the contents of the file for you. So let's go into, so right now we're in intro to bash. You see there's two files here. So if I list that, there's file1.txt and a python file.py. And you can see that here on the right-hand side too. If I do cat file1.txt, we can see that this is the only thing in the file, just some random data, or a string that says this is a file with some random data. And then if I want to read the Python file, I can do cat Python file, and there's a function in there that prints a bunch of triangles. All right, so now we want to use touch. Touch is a command that you use for creating a file in the current directory. So the type of file that you create depends on the extension. So you can make any type of file that you want. It could be a .txt, it could be a Python file, it could be a random extension, which will not open because your computer won't know how to handle it. But you can make any type of file here. Again, this takes an argument, so you say touch. Also, clear is a great way of clearing up your terminal. If it gets super messy and there's a lot of text, press clear, and you'll have a fresh, well, it doesn't delete it, it just scrolls you down, but it makes it look like you have a fresh terminal open up. So let's say we want to create a new file. Let's say we want to call touch new file .txt. Now you see on the side here a file was created, and if I list the files, there's certainly a new file here. So over here, if you take a look, we had no file here, and then we have, well, it was an intro to bash, but we'll have a new file there. Great, so now we're going to take a quick break and do a Kahoot. So if you guys can sign in here with your net IDs, we can give you attendance and extra credit points if you get the questions correct. Before I start the quiz, or not the quiz, the questions, are there any pressing questions right now about anything we've learned so far? Or is anyone a refresher on any of the commands we've learned? Okay, great. We'll give it another minute. Is everyone in the Kahoot? Are we waiting on anybody? Okay. No, the fire Kahoot music, okay.
As long as this, okay. Just wanted to mention, don't worry about the points of this. Just focus on the accuracy and getting it in on time. There's no special prize for finishing top 5 other than like, your personal pride.
Also, if you're just putting your full name in, please put your net ID because we can't give you points if it's not your net ID. Like over here. Oh, sorry, yeah. We'll do it next time.
Raise your hand if you're not in the Kahoot yet. Okay, no problem. We'll give it like another minute. I can come help if you need it. Good.
Okay, raise your hand if you're not in the Kahoot. You're good, okay, cool. All right, so the first question, you'll get points for this regardless. There's no correct answer here. All right, cool. So the answer to that one was cat file.txt. So if I can do that over here, cat is short for concatenate, which just means they're going to, I'm not sure why these concatenate for viewing the file, but if you do cat file1.txt, you can see everything inside there. Cool. We'll come back to the Kahoot later once we learn more commands. Right. So we learned touch, that's how you create files. Now we want to learn rm, or remove. Remove will delete a file. It doesn't move it to the trash, it permanently deletes the file. It's gone forever, you can't get it back. So the way you do it, it's similar to touch. You just write rm followed by the file that you want to delete. So let's say for the new file that we created over here, we do rm new file.txt, like this. And that file is gone. It's not in my trash. I can't get it back. It's permanently deleted. Just know rm can't be used on directories that have, you can use rm to delete a directory, but you can't use rm to delete a directory that has content in it. So if I list the files in here, you can see the directory 1 has stuff in it. So if I do rm directory 1, I can't delete because it's a directory, and also because it has content in it. That make sense? Cool. So we had the new file here. We use rm new file, and the file is gone. Right. So mkdir, or make directory. See, this is kind of easy to remember because it's almost spelling it out. It's very similar to touch. You just write mkdir space the name of your directory. So here we're going to go into directory 2. So cd directory 1. So if I list our working directory, we're now in directory 2, which is over here. And let's make a directory inside this directory. So let's call it, oh, not that. New directory. And we see if I list it, there's a new directory here. And if you look on the side here in my folders, there's a new folder that has no content in it. Yeah, question? Right, yeah. So if I can show you now, if I do like touch and I make a random, like, let's call it directory, you see that you don't have a folder here. You just have a file with no extension, and it won't be, you can't really use a file like this generally. Right. And then rmdir. So no prize for guessing what this does. This removes your directory. But you can delete a directory that has files in it. So if we try doing that, let's try deleting. So if we go, so you know directory 2 has stuff in it. You can see that over here. If I try doing rmdir on directory 2, we get an error message. It's not empty. So it's kind of a safety measure because you don't accidentally delete something that has a lot of useful files in there. But if I go into directory 2 to our new directory, which is over here, and I do rmdir new directory, that directory is gone. Again, using remove directory from your command line will not move it to trash. It just gets deleted permanently. So we were here, we had a new directory in here, and it was gone. Okay, so we'll take another break, and we'll do another question. Is everyone on Kahoot? Does anyone need a second? Yep. Cool. All right, so the answer to this one was this here. So let's try that in the demo. So if we go into, so I did pwd, and this is where our path is right now. We're in directory 1 at the moment. If I do cd space ... that'll move us up a directory. So we'll move from directory 1 to the intro to bash directory. So this is what we get now. Are there any questions about that, why that happened? Okay, and because the red one was wrong, I'll explain how we get to users. If we want to get there, we do cd and then follow that with a /. We use the absolute path. Yeah. Which one, sorry? Oh, here? It just separates us from the file right now. And then this is a Git repo. So it's it just shows you what you're typing, where your typing starts. That makes sense. Okay. Okay. The next command we're going to learn is mv, or move. And move has two main purposes. It's either to rename a file or to move a file into a new location. So if you're going to rename the file, you put two commands in. So firstly, you'll put the file whose name you want to change, and follow that by the name that you want to change it to. If the file already exists, you will erase that file's content and replace it with the original file's content. But if the file doesn't exist, you'll just rename the file and delete the original. Sorry about that. Let's go into undisturb. All right. So let's go into directory 1. And let's make a new file. Okay. So if I cat the new file, we see there's nothing in there. There's no content in there at the moment. But there's already a file in here. It's called file in dir directory. So I do cat file in dir. So this is the text file inside another directory. So that's the content in there. Now I'm going to move the content from our current file into the new file. So if I do mv file dir and then follow it up with a new file. So the first argument is the file whose content we want to move, and the second is the file that we want to move the content to. we see that file in dir doesn't exist anymore, but new file is still here. And if I cat the new file, we have the original content in there. But let's say we give it a file name of a file that doesn't exist. So if I say, and let's say file doesn't exist, .txt. It looks as though it just renamed the file. What it actually did was copy its content into a new file called file doesn't exist.txt, and it deleted new file.txt. Cool. You can also use move to move a group of files or a single file from one location to another. So let's go up into intro to bash. So this is the folder we're in right now. We can see that there's one text file in here. It's called file1.txt. And let's say I want to move this file from from intro to bash to directory 2. So I'll do mv file1.txt, and I can give it either the relative path or the absolute path. In this case, I'm going to give it the relative path. And now you can see that the file has moved from intro to bash and is now in directory 2. Any questions about that? Okay. And something cool you can do is, so let's say I'm going to make a couple of random files right now. If you do mv and you put a star and then followed up with an extension, you'll move all files with this extension to wherever you want it to move it to. So let's try doing that. We can see that all the files that were text files have moved from intro to bash all the way up to directory 2. Any questions about that? Cool. Now I have cp, or copy. Copy will copy a file into a new location. And its usage is very similar to move, except when you use move, you lose the original file, but in copy, you'll keep the original file. So I'll show you guys that here. I'm going to make a file. Let's call it copy. And I want to move this file, which is here right now, into directory 1. I can do cp copy me.txt and move it into directory 1. And we can see that we have the same file over here, but the original one also exists. We didn't move it, we copied it. Similarly, if you wanted to copy the contents of this file into a new file, you can just do cp, or let's add some text in there. Okay. I'll teach you guys Vim soon. So now if I read this file, we have some content in there. I'm going to use cp copy me.txt and put it into a copied file. And now when we read the content in copied file, we see that it's the same as the original file, but we didn't lose the original file that's still there in the directory. That makes sense? It's very similar to move, except you don't lose the original. Great. And finally, I want to teach you all the man command. It's short for manual, and it's a very useful command that you'll probably use throughout your programming career. Again, it takes an argument, so you'll type man and follow it up with any command that you want to learn more about. So you type man ls, for instance. You will get the manual for ls. And you might think you're stuck because you don't have your terminal anymore, but the way to get out of this, it's in a Vim file. You press escape, and then you do just Q. And the good thing about man is that you don't need Wi-Fi to access the man pages. They're already in bash. So you can just, even if you're like on the road, you can just type in man at some random command that you haven't heard about, and you'll get the manual for that. All right, so I want to go over some tips and tricks that I think are super useful for being efficient in Bash, because typing a lot can be a bad use of your time, so we're going to try to speed that up as much as we can. So when typing in terminal, the first thing that I think is super useful is the tab key. Let's say you're typing, let's say you make a really long file name, for instance. So let's say our file has a really long file name. It's really long. Okay? And now I realize I hate this file, I hate the file name. I want to delete it. Now I could do rm has a really, that's going to take me ages. That's super long. Another thing you can do is just type in the first defining characters. So the first characters that will separate this file from the other files, and just hit tab, and you'll automatically get the rest of the file. And you can get rid of that file. But let's say you have a file, let's say you press tab and you're, so let's go into directory 2. So you can see in directory 2, we have a bunch of files that start the same. So if we do rm fil, so now terminal doesn't know whether we mean file 1 or file 2. So if you hit tab, it'll prompt you to choose which one you want. And then you can choose which one you want from there. Another really useful tip is use the up-down arrow keys to find previous commands you just entered. So I just deleted rm file 2. I just this command, sorry. You can see it's there. And you can see all my previous commands by me pressing the up key. And you can scroll to the up and down key. So it's a good way if you're like using a command repeatedly, instead of typing it over and over again, you can just press up and hit enter. And let's say you want to find a specific file. I want to see the last time I made a directory. I can type mkdir and then press up, and I can see all the previous times I made a directory. It'll only give me the history of the make directory command. And Control-C will end the current program. So let's say you run some code, and it's running forever, and you don't know what to do. It's like slowing down your computer, things are catching fire. If you just press Control-C, your command or process will end, sorry. That's a good way of, if something's going wrong, you can quickly end that process without having to close the terminal completely. Finally, the command ! Will bring out the previous command entered up. So if I do current working directory, I get this. If I do ! And hit enter, we can see it's back, and I can do that command again. Any questions about any of the tips and tricks that I mentioned? Nope, okay. We have one more question, so let's go into that one. All right, great. Yeah, so if you do rmdir on an empty directory, you will just delete it. Unless there's files in the directory, you will get an error message. So let's make a random directory in here. Make directory. Delete me. If I list it, we can see there's a delete me directory in here. And as you saw, there's no files in there right now. And we can check that. There's no files in there. And now if I do remove directory, delete me, we can get rid of it, and it's gone now. Make sense? Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is flags. So flags are a way of having different behavior from your commands. So a lot of the commands I just showed you don't just do one thing. They can do many different things based on the flag you give them. And you can see that in your man pages. So if I do man ls, for instance, you can scroll down to flags, and we can see there's a bunch of different flags here. And this will create different instances of the command that you're using right now. And you put the flag at the end of your command. So I'm going to show you two flags that are really, really useful. First is LSA. So you might have noticed in the files that I listed that there's a hidden file here, and there's a hidden directory here. So if you have a file that starts with a dot, that file is hidden. You can't see it. So if I go into intro to bash, for instance, you can't see it there. There's no hidden file at the moment. It looks like those are all the files there. And if I go into there in my terminal and I do ls, there's no hidden file in here right now. But if I do ls and then I'd use the flag -a or all, I can see all the hidden files in there as well. And now if I read that, and now you don't have to do anything else to read the file. If I want to read the file, we can see there's content in that file. Similarly with the directory over here, if I go into directory 2, or directory 1, sorry, if I do ls, let's clear that up first. If I do ls, or list, you can see there's nothing else, no hidden files in here, but if I do lsa, there's a hidden directory. Does that make sense? Any questions about the hidden files or how to view them? Yeah. No, so the dot indicates your home directory, and the dot indicates the above directory. It's just letting you know how you can move in between these files. Yeah. Any other questions about that? All right. And I also want to teach you rmrf. So this will delete a file directory and all its underlying components. So we said that if we use rmdir on a directory and there are files in it, we can delete it. So for this file, directory 1, for instance, there's stuff in there. We can delete it because there's stuff in there. But if I do rm directory 1, and then if I do rm rf directory 1, or directory 2, we'll do directory 2, we can fully delete the directory even though there's content in there. And you see that directory doesn't exist anymore. It basically recursively goes into your file, or directory, sorry, deletes everything in there, and it'll delete the directory itself. And it's a good way if you have like a bunch of junk in a folder, a good way of deleting that permanently. But be careful with the rf function because if you have important stuff, you will permanently delete it. So I would advise against using rf because unless you know for sure what's in that file. Any questions about that? All right, great. That was everything that we had to cover today. Are there any questions? You can come here and ask us. If not, you guys are free to go. Oh, yeah.
So from my understanding, Piazza should be like joining any other class. I believe if you look on Piazza and go for, join class and you put CS196, it should be there. If it isn't, let me know because we can't join the Piazza. So just a few things I want to throw in there about Bash. Thursday's lecture is also going to be on Bash. That's going to be a little more involved. Make sure you're comfortable with the material that we did today. And overall, try to get comfortable with using the terminal, just like normally and in your other classes, because we're going to be using terminal the entire class. You're going to be using terminal in your whole career and in school. So we're going to release a homework on Bash on Friday, so that way you guys can get some application with it, and you're kind of forced to understand all the concepts. Next week is going to be Git. I'll be teaching those lectures. We'll be doing Git all of next week, and it'll dip into the next week as well. And then we're going to start after that doing the Rust programming language, and both of us will be working on the material for that. Does anyone have questions about the course? Because I know not all of you were here for lecture 0. Any pressing concerns? Yeah, what's up? So if you go on the CS196 website, it should be up now. It went down randomly yesterday. And you go to resources and scroll down. You should see under lecture 1, if you click on the slides button, you'll be able to see these slides. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, so office hours are not decided yet. They're to be announced. As of right now, they will likely be 2 times a week, but we will release the information pretty soon. We just need to sort a few more things out.
Also, the files that we're using today, I'm going to upload the original folder. We'll upload it to the course website, so if you guys want to mess around with that and follow along with the lecture, you can do that.
any more questions, anything you guys want to ask us, you can come down after the lecture, but I'm pretty sure that's good for today.